Hi. Yeah, I was wondering if I could speak to Jack Horner.
Jack doesn't work here anymore. He retired.
Oh, he's retired. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you paleontologist by any chance?
I'm a technician in the paleo department.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was just going to ask a couple of questions about dinosaur finds. There was one in particular. I've been looking into this, kind of doing my own research. Interest of science and all that. And this one was pretty interesting. There was I don't know if you're familiar with this, but down in Dallas there was a discovery of a nodosaur dinosaur near a shopping center.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, it was in when was this in the news? It was a little while back, but yeah. Anyway, it was. I've gotten into like looking into paleontology and all that, and what stood out to me about this was that they find this, which they said it was a pretty major discovery of a dinosaur that was kind of a rare find. And they found it near the shopping center, which is, I guess, would that be unusual to find one at like when they're digging up to do construction and stuff like that? Is that unusual to find a dinosaur?
No, it just depends on what strata happens to be there. If there's dinosaurs in there, you might find one.
Yeah, you might find one, but would the average person recognize it, or because it's not something you hear about often?
Most people do. Fossil bone pretty much looks like modern bone, except it's a rock. It has structure and everything.
But it's going to look to an average person like a rock. It's not really going to stand out as a bone, would it?
Well, it depends on what part you see. If you can see, bone striation and that kind of thing, they might recognize it.
Yeah, so it's kind of up to an expert eye to kind of suss it out whether or not it's a dinosaur bone. Yeah, I guess, right?
Especially nodosaurs, they have some really gnarly, strange-looking bone. It's hard to tell them from rock, some of them. But.
Yeah, that's what kind of stood out to me about looking into this stuff. It's like, how do you know it's a rock or a bone? I've looked at stuff. There's plenty of stuff online. I've seen fossils too. When I was it was a long time ago when I was a teenager. I remember going to some people's property and they had some of those looked like those Cambrian type fossil shell things.
Yeah.
I've seen those, and there's like, oh yeah, that definitely you could tell by looking at them. That's what it is. But like some of this stuff, I'm like, how do you know it's a bone? It's just interesting. And then like another thing about this particular find was that the guy who was with his son is actually his son that actually did the discovery, and he was an employee of the Dallas Zoo. And then the week of that being aired on the news, there was a dinosaur exhibit that was just being opened up in Dallas at the zoo. I was like, wow. That is some amazing luck there. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of that?
It don't hurt to be lucky.
Yeah, I know, because if you look at the Bone Wars with Cope and Marsh and all that, and like I was reading the history about that, and I was like, man, those dudes were incredibly lucky. So they come out to they were from Europe and they come over here to the Americas and the American Southwest or whatever, and then they was just making just all those discoveries. And I'm like thinking, how do they find all these bones, and at the same time, in the Americas, and it was everything was under development and farming was going on, and there's farmers digging up vast fields, and of course Indians were here for however many thousands of years before it got so-called discovered. But what do you think about that? How come the Indians didn't have any familiarity with dinosaurs or anything like that?
They had one called a buffalo stone, and it was actually an ammonite, one of the nautiloid sea animals.
Yeah, yeah. So they certainly found fossils then, but like ammonite fossils, but you know, when I'm looking at this discovery of the T-Rex, the one they call Sioux.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, now if an Indian found that, which would you would think that, okay, we find them today, but like, now if an Indian saw that, you telling me they wouldn't recognize that as something significant? Like, hey, what the hell is this? And you know, the teeth and the thing like you see on the, and it's like they never found anything like that. I mean, all that time, it's just, you know what I mean? It just seems.
They did.
So they did, but like, is there any like record of that or?
It's not much. I mean, there's some in there written histories, like the Blackfeet and things like that.
So they did have. What did they think it? What did they think it was?
They even showed Lewis and Clark some stuff that they had found when Lewis and Clark went through here in Montana.
What was it? T-Rexes or stuff like that, or?
I don't know what it was for sure.
But I mean, wouldn't that? I mean, you see what I'm getting at, though. I mean, that just seems like I don't know. I mean, you know, people are asking those questions. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, that is a good question. Like how? I mean, dang, how do they not run across this stuff when it seems in the modern day, or since what was it that when the bone wars were at the mid 1800s, something like that, and it's like, you know, bam, they start finding like all these finds and stuff, and it's like, wow, that's
they were the first ones to really, or one of the first to really come out and look, and you know, so they were the first ones to find all this stuff that had eroded out and was laying on the surface and things like that. So.
Yeah, so they were. I mean, now like I was talking about before, like farmers are digging up, plowing up fields and all that stuff, and they're not really. I mean, I don't know of where that's documented that they've made dinosaur discoveries by plowing fields. So it was kind of like. So I guess that means dinosaurs are kind of specifically regulated to certain topography or geography, and you have to know kind of specifically where they are. Is that how it works?
You have to be in the proper strata, you know, where they lived.
Yeah, but we're talking about, what was it, 65 million years ago?
Yeah.
And so some of that 65 million year old strata is close to the top, and then some of it isn't, or how does that work?
Exactly. A lot of it's eroded away, and then when the mountains are being pushed up, it pushed up older stuff to the surface, and
so
then it eroded away.
It pushes up stuff as far back as 65 million years. Now, how many layers would be on top of 65 million years? Be a lot of layers, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Just looking into this stuff, especially after that guy. I was like, man, that's really. I mean, what are the odds? They got to be astronomical odds against finding well, they said it was a rare find, this nodosaur, and then the guy happens to work for the zoo, and then the zoo happens to have an exhibit coming out that happens to come out the very week of they talked about that on the news. I was like, wow, that is. I mean, the odds have to be astronomical. And then, you know, when I get to look at it, it's like this. It's like there's a lot of other accounts kind of like that where individuals are finding this stuff, and it's also. I mean, it'll even be in the article how it was lucky, it was rare. It's kind of like a fluke thing, and it's like, God. I mean, I just makes me. Well, to be honest with you, I'm just kind of skeptical. It makes me kind of skeptical of the whole thing because I just don't believe in that kind of luck. You know, it seems more like something that you would run across if they were going to do some kind of cynical promotion for something, and then it's like, oh, we had. You see what I mean? I mean, this is 2017 after all, for crying out loud. I mean, we don't have to beat around the bush and pretend like we're Pollyannas here, you know what I mean? This is the modern day. So, I mean, you see what I'm getting at, like incentive to do something like that, and then plus at the same time, like no potential negative downsides to it because like absolutely nobody questions it. It's like you go to a dinosaur museum. how many, like, let me ask you, how many people on average do you think that know going into a dinosaur museum that what they're looking at is simulations, they're not actually skeletons that they're looking at, that they're replicas, right? Is that correct?
Well, not all of them. A lot of them are real.
Like what percentage do you think
I
are
have no idea.
actual bones?
No idea.
Like you have no idea whatsoever? Like
No.
any kind of educated guess?
Nope.
Yeah, but I mean, from what I understand, I mean, I'm not a paleontologist myself, but from what I understand, that when you go and look at a skeleton in a museum, I've seen the documentaries and stuff. They're showing it too, how they do these casts and stuff, and so you're not actually looking at actual bones. They're not going to mix in real bone with a cast, are they? Is that something that's typically done, or?
Yeah.
So there might be actual bone fragments
Well, if they're
in with
missing
the
parts, you make parts and you put them in there.
Yeah, you make the parts. Like, yeah, I was watching them do it. Yeah, of course, there's videos on it. They're showing them how they.
Casts are actually taken from the real bone. They're molded right from the real bone.
But don't they have to? I mean, you don't find complete skeletons. They even say that, right? They don't.
Oh, they're rare, but it happens.
Yeah, but in the case where it's not a complete skeleton, they have to recreate the bone, right? Or they have to recreate the bone based on other stuff, right?
What's missing? Yeah.
Yeah, whatever's missing. Yeah. So what it kind of occurred to me is like, so you go into a museum and the average person is not really aware of any of this. So it's almost kind of like, on its face, it's sort of like a misrepresentation of sorts, is it not? Because they go through also the trouble of...
In our exhibit hall, the replicas we have them tagged in the text as replicas, and the real bone as real bone. So.
Oh, it's actually... I've been to the Smithsonian and all that. I don't recall any of that being... I'm not saying, I'm not denying that that's the case, but I don't recall seeing that. So it wasn't like prominent. Like why wouldn't there be like a sort of a what would it be, like a infographic or something to accompany the display to say, oh, here's the real bone in red and and stuff like that, so that it's all kind of scientific and. Oh, they do. A lot of them do that. Okay, yeah. I've been to several museums. I just haven't, never, not to my recollection.
The casts in our real bone mouths are different color than the real bone.
Oh, okay. So it's different colored, but yeah, it's like, why don't they just go ahead and put skin and everything on it, since it's not actual, skeleton? I was just wondering, because that's.
Some of them do.
Well, yeah, some of them do, but it's like typically what you see is just like bones,
Well, we have fleshed out ones too, we call them, where we put on the skin and put the muscles on, put the skin on.
Yeah. I've seen that too. I've seen like models and all that, and also was. Are you familiar with Paluxy River bed where they have the? Yeah, and I was looking at that, and it was like. So they're saying, okay, these are dinosaur tracks and these are human tracks, and it got me to thinking. It's like, well, how do you know dinosaur tracks from like emu tracks? Because they look pretty darn close. I mean, like whether or not emus existed in the northern continent or whatever. I don't know what the official word is on that, but it was like, man, I mean, dinosaur tracks and bird tracks are sure a lot similar.
Yeah, some of them are.
Yeah, they're like real similar. I mean, like by appearances, like to the layman, of course, the expert would, identify, hey, that's a dinosaur, hey, that's a, emu. But like for me, I'm like, hey, that looks like exactly like that. You know what I mean? So it kind of like, I could see where, for the layman to get confused. And then I was reading some other stuff, and they said, oh, yeah, they had all kinds of stuff like that at one time in some national park in Texas. And it used to be able to go there and look at it, and it was inside the park, and they said they took all that stuff out, like with the dinosaur, so-called dinosaur tracks and the human tracks, and they took all that out. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. Why remove all that. And it was like,
hey, sir, I'm gonna have to let you go. I got some plaster sitting on me that I got to get back to you.
oh, right on, man. Well, I appreciate your time, dude, and thanks again. All right, you have a good one, okay?
You too. Bye.
Bye.